Hello all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by hairy, hunky, huggable homos who love film to discuss movies, sometimes dish a little bit of movie news. But on special episodes like this, you're getting all movies. That's all you get. One movie, actually, for the whole freaking episode. Hope you don't mind, because that's what we're doing. As usual, I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Jim Pugliafico. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Will Lindis is, of course, with us as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, hi there, ho there, movie fans.
All right. We're also thrilled to welcome some friends from one of my favorite podcasts, one of Will's favorite podcasts, one of what your favorite podcast should be if you like comic books. That's a Comic Book Bears podcast. And, of course, we have Bill Zanowitz joining us. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, everybody out there in MBP land.
And we also have... Is it pronounced Mowry? Steve Mowry? Is that right?
Maury. After 4 months,
Maury?
I don't even know.
I don't know. I've heard it pronounced like 8 different ways. Like, Maury. I don't even know.
That was actually pretty close.
Was it? I thought
that was pretty close. It's
well rehearsed for you listeners.
It's very subtle pronunciation right there. Just
you know what it is. It's Steve's first time on the Movie Bears podcast, so it's our little hazing ritual.
Pronounce names.
Do we just need to take this back to elementary school? Like, welcome Stephen M to the podcast.
Let me tell you this. After having Steve on the show for a while now, he was born to be a pledge.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's kind of hot in a way.
It's a little hot in here. I don't.
Has anyone got a paddle with like MBP?
He's still got to make one.
There we go.
This will be fun.
I think I know a dungeon daddy who could probably give it.
Well, for those of you who've actually listened to the one podcast that we had where we talked about jock straps, everyone knows that I do not own one, so.
Well, there you go.
There's a lot of things that I seem to be missing, so.
All right,
so listeners, send him jock straps.
That's right. Go through your jockstrap collection, find the ones that you can part with, and send them to Steve Maury.
Wash them first, or don't, Steve.
Please wash them first.
Yeah, let's get him some new. Let's get him some new. You gotta get your first jockstrap's got to be a nice new one. You don't need a hand-me-down jockstrap. You don't need someone else's goods or bads or whatever.
What's wrong with a little bit of man funk in your?
And there we have it, folks. our patented Adrian Charlie blush moment of the episode. 3 minutes in, there it is. You're welcome.
You're welcome, Adrian.
I was wondering when you guys were going to get to that, but I'm glad I was able to be part of that.
We love you, Adrian.
We've not been wasting any time lately.
Oh yeah, most of them come like right at the beginning. It's like.
It's just kind of how it happens. You don't talk to the boys for a week. When you get together, right? You got to go all 8th grade for a little while, I guess.
Hey, what can I say? We've been coming early.
Some of you, maybe. Anyway.
Just in time delivery. That's right.
So this week, guys, we are so thrilled to have you, Bill and Steve. It's been a while since we've sat down with you guys. We definitely want to hear your thoughts on the movie this week. We're going to be talking about Marvel Studios' Ant-Man, the newest superhero offering. I'm anxious to hear what you guys think. I think we're just going to jump right in. Yes?
Pretty
no?
much, yeah.
Okay.
Are we pretty good? Okay. So let me just set this up. Set some proper expectations, if you will. We're going to talk about the movie spoiler-free, in case you are on the fence about the movie. We don't want to rip your virginal innocence away from you. So if you're on the fence about seeing this movie, you just want to know our quick and dirty thoughts, whether we think you should see it, feel free to hang around. We see some of you hanging out live with us. Welcome, by the way. Give us a comment or thought on the video link here, and we'll maybe give you a shout-out on air. If it's appropriate for the general mass audiences, we had a guy the other day who was sending us some really dirty stuff that was not appropriate to read on air. So Kingsley S55, wherever you are, thanks for the steamy messages. We appreciate them, but not appropriate for on air. But unless we do an After Dark show or something, guys, like Big Brother does After Dark.
Could our recording get much more After Dark?
Well, I think it could.
Oh, it could
That's
definitely.
possible. I think it could go there.
Well, it's only really After Dark here on the East Coast, so we're
that's true. And thank you for being up so late. Did you get your disco nap in, Steve?
I didn't really, but I did get some boring TV in, so I think it works.
Oh, okay.
Well, one, half a dozen the other, yeah.
Whatever keeps you awake, right? But guys, we'll give fair spoiler warnings before we jump into that. So fret not. We will not spoil you without undue warning. But here we go, our discussion of Ant-Man. And this is the part where, like, the 8 people who just joined the hangout are like, why is there no sound?
What the fuck are these guys doing?
Why are their heads bobbing up?
They're shaking their heads and no one talks.
Time for a new sound card.
Is there music that only they can hear? And the answer is yes.
Oh goodness! Do not adjust your broadcast. It's fine. That was just a little sound of silence there for Jim, our amazing sound editor, to go back and add our cool little sound effect in post. But let's do this. Will, I think you were probably the most excited for this movie out of Jim and I. That's Jim and I, not Jim and I, the sign, because that would be weird.
That would be very weird.
That would be a little strange, right? In like a weird kind of way. But Will, why don't you give us the setup of Ant-Man, as if people don't fucking know already, and then tell us if you think it's worth seeing in theaters, if you should wait for it on rental, or not that you would say this, but skip it entirely.
Yeah, well, the thing is that this might be one where, compared to some of the other big-budget superhero movies that have come out, this might be the one where maybe people don't know what to expect from it, you know, because this isn't a character who is as well-known to the general masses, to the people who haven't, you know, picked up a comic book, or that's not really their bag. So here's the quickie description, ripped right from IMDb because plagiarism. So, armed with the super suit, with the astonishing ability to shrink in scale but increase in strength, cat burglar Scott Lang, who is played by Paul Rudd, must embrace his inner hero and help his mentor, Dr. Hank Pym, who's played by Michael Douglas, plan and pull off a heist that will save the world. So this is the latest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. This is the same company that brought us the Avengers franchise and Iron Man and Thor and all of those movies which you've undoubtedly seen. You've undoubtedly bought the lunchbox or whatever it is. Unless you're living under a rock, you've heard of the Avengers. I was very cautiously optimistic about this film going into it. Marvel's done right by me in the cinematic universe. Even their films that I didn't enjoy quite as much, I would still say have been overall good or enjoyable watches. There hasn't been like a straight out and out like bad film from them, and I've been waiting to see when that was going to happen, when the bubble was finally going to break, and will this film be the one that does it? And I'm very happy to report that no, this film did not let me down. I enjoyed Ant-Man quite a bit. For a few reasons. First of all, I thought the performances are both the best and the worst thing about this movie. There were three performances actually in this movie that I thought were standout, that I really, really enjoyed. Of course, the two leads, the one I already mentioned, Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas, are both stellar in what they do. Paul Rudd is one of those guys who we know he can do comedy, but I wasn't quite sure whether he could do be an action leading man, and I think it worked here, especially with this being more of a quirky, comedic version of the superhero film, more a la like Guardians of the Galaxy than some of the other ones that Marvel has put out. Michael Douglas is Michael freaking Douglas. He brings his A game to just about every role he does, and I thought there was a lot of there was really a lot of heart to what he brought here. Michael Pena shows up here in a scene-stealing role as the comic relief friend, sidekick type guy. He has two comedic set pieces, one towards the beginning of the movie, one towards the end, that I thought were absolutely fantastic. Flip side of that coin, there were two performances that didn't quite do it as much for me. I wouldn't straight out call them bad performances, but I will say they Marvel has a tendency to cast fairly charismatic leads in some of these major roles, and I think they missed the mark with 2 of these casting decisions. I wasn't all about Evangeline Lilly here as Hope Van Dyne. She's one of those people who I think does perfectly fine in some roles, but there were a couple of times where she was asked to emote in this film to really put her heart out on her sleeve, and I felt like sometimes she overacted, sometimes she underacted. It didn't quite always work for me. Not straight out and out bad, but it was she didn't stack up to some of the others. Corey Stoll also is a major character here, and we'll talk more about his role when we get into spoilers. But considering the role that he plays in this film, he was a little bit more stiff and forgettable than his counterpart in other superhero Marvel movies. Again, nothing against his performance out and out. I just think there wasn't as much for his character to do. At its heart, Ant-Man is a heist film, more a la Ocean's 11 than other types of films, and I think that's where it really shined for me. The parts where they were planning their big heist, where they were assembling their team, where they were kind of figuring out how they were going to do it and what they were doing, the end goal. I thought all of that stuff, kind of the middle act, maybe Act 2 of the film, was quite good. Like I mentioned before, this is a very funny film. It's not quite as charming as we had with Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy, but it was still quite enjoyable, quite fun. I definitely say that this is a watch. This is one you should go see. Some of the special effects, especially as they play with the shrinking and the growing, are really quite, I don't want to say ingenious. That's maybe giving it too much credit, but I think they were really well done. It made some of the action set pieces both dynamic, interesting, and a little bit different than things that we've seen before. So I liked it. It is not my favorite of the Marvel films. I'm not putting this on my top 10 of the year list or anything like that, but as far as this type of film goes, I think it did everything it set out to do and more, and I hope that if you haven't heard of Ant-Man before, if you're kind of curious about this character, you go give this film a try, you go check this film out, and maybe get exposed to a different part of the comics universe than maybe you were exposed to before. So, yeah, I give it a thumbs up.
You must have really liked it, because I just clocked you at 4 minutes and 23 seconds, Will.
What can I say? I likes these things.
I guess
Quantity is not an indicator of quality. It could have easily gone on, a 5.5-minute rant for Poltergeist,
That's true.
I think to be fair, I think I kind of did on Poltergeist.
I think you did. I think your record is like 7 minutes and 48 seconds for like Pacific Rim, but it's all good. They can't all be Pacific Rim Love Fest, right?
They can't all be.
Nice. Bill, what about you? What did you think of Ant-Man?
Well, I agreed with a lot of what Will said. I will take the road to disagreement on Evangeline Lilly. I don't think she's a powerhouse. I agree with a lot of the things you said, Will. But I did think that, and this is something that's really hard to pull off as an actor, the scenes when it's a sizable chunk of the movie where it is Michael Douglas, Paul Rudd, and her, to achieve that sort of chemistry between three people, and especially since a lot of that is, not, I don't want to say antagonistic, but they are at odds over certain issues, that's something that either you have it or you don't. And I would not be surprised if through the audition process, when they saw that with her up against the two of them, something clicked. I agree with you totally, and add to it, I really hated Corey Stoll in this movie. I really did. He was stiff as a board. He's an actor I like. I thought he was brilliant in Midnight in Paris. But for this one, it was cookie-cutter villain, and not even to the... They didn't give him enough to do in the one extreme as the mustache twirler, or on the other extreme as a buffoon. They didn't know where to go, and I think that was one of the failings of the script, since it did pass through so many hands. But I have to say I also give it a thumbs up. I like the possibility of Marvel putting out more films like this. I imagine something like an Ant-Man 2 would be far superior to the first Ant-Man, because it seems that there's in a lot of framework, there's you have to introduce the character. I mean, I can't imagine what the marketing meetings were for this. How the hell you market this movie? They tried, and I think that what you've seen out there doesn't really give you the flavor of the film. It's far more fun than the trailers and the television commercials. And I'm excited if this does have legs where Marvel can keep making movies like this with their secondary and third level characters. I think you're going to get some real gems down the road, and this is enough of a template that they can work from. I thought so. I'm with you, thumbs up, and also definitely to see it in the theaters because it's a crowd pleaser. On top of it.
Bill, did you see it in 3D?
Yes. Did I pay for it in 3D? No.
How does that happen, Bill? Tell us about that.
They gave me the wrong ticket, and we just walked in.
I'm sure.
Honest.
Those theaters.
Yeah, but I didn't think there were any scenes that really blew my mind, and there were some visual effects I was actually disappointed in. But we can talk about that later when we get into the spoiler area.
Indeed. Well, so far, 2 gotta see it recommendations. For me, I'll just come right out and say yes. I think you should go see it. Yes, I think it's a fun film. But I'm not going to be as glowy about it, I think. I will say I want more of these standalone films and less of the Avengers films. Yes, I said it. Get over it, gays. The second Avengers film for me was just such a big steaming pile of meh. And a lot of the reason for that is when you have so many characters in one movie, you don't get enough time to really get into any one character's head. You don't get a lot of that character development. And that was one of the things that I really loved about Ant-Man. Even though the humor fell really flat for me in a lot of places, even though I felt like there wasn't enough like from Ant-Man / Scott Lang's point of view focus, there was a lot of like exterior focus. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I still appreciated a lot of how we kind of got to know Scott Lang and Hope and Hank. I appreciate those things, and I feel like we wouldn't have time for that kind of stuff in like an Avengers movie or like a Justice League film. So I'm all about these smaller films. I think they're fun. I will say I'm going to disagree with Will as well on Evangeline Lilly. Love me some Freckles from Lost. I actually liked her in this role. I don't think it necessarily gave her a lot of range to work with, unfortunately. The character is a little aloof. She's a little standoffish. We had a few warm moments, a little bit of that warm chemistry that I did enjoy. I just don't think there were a ton of opportunities there. But I thought she did great. Corey Stoll, I will agree with you guys. Not a high point of the movie for me. I really liked him in House of Cards, but I felt like in this role, you could have stuck any bald guy in there, and it would have been same thing. Michael Douglas, holy crap, I love Michael Douglas. He's so good. Yes, in everything he does. Minor spoiler, I don't know. There's a part where you see him younger, and I don't know if they use computers or makeup or some version of the two, but holy crap, he looked like he walked right off the set of Fatal Attraction or something. You know what I mean? Like, he looked so young. I was like, whoa, is that Michael Douglas? Overall, I mean, it was fun. I liked it. Probably a B- for me, but a lot of really cool visual stuff. I like a lot of the like miniaturization, and then enlargement things. Although some of the physics there, and the physics that they freaking state how they work in the movie with how his power suit works, Jim, I know you are probably going to hit on this later too, don't make any sense to me whatsoever. Maybe you comic book bears can clarify a little bit. Maybe they just didn't explain the suit well enough. So I have some questions there, and I think we'll get back to those. But yeah, I mean, this is a fun film. Definitely go out and see this. You probably have seen it already, so why are we even giving a recommendation? We're doing it anyway. So how about
part of the show? It's part of the show. We give our recommendations, then we can talk about it.
That's right. That's right. We're bears, but we're like cats. We follow a very strict routine.
There's a lot of people that maybe haven't seen this one. Compared to some of the other Marvel movies, it hasn't had like one of those like
$100 million
$400 trillion
Right.
openings or what have you. So I think there are a lot of people who skipped this one because it's like, who the fuck is Ant-Man? I don't know.
I think there's a lot of people that will skip, but I also think there are some people relying on word of mouth.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And
Yeah.
I think the second weekend will be.
Or
Same.
they're relying on awesome podcasts like the Comic Book Bears podcast and the Movie Bears podcast coming together in an epic Avengers-esque crossover to bring them advice on whether they should go see it. So, yes, exactly. Everyone do a heroic pose. There we go. Nice. Perfect. Put that on a poster.
That's going to make great audio podcasting.
I know, right? I know. The iTunes people are going to be like, what? What? Huh?
You can just add some descriptive video, like descriptive language right in there. Just say,
No, it's going to be like a musical cue, like da 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 da.
Yeah.
There we go. Jim will do something. He always serves us well. Steve, what did you think about Ant-Man?
Well, you guys pretty much said what I was feeling. I definitely agree, and I'm going to bring back one of my favorite characters from this was Michael Pena. His character was just, had some really great comic moments. When I was sitting in the theater, my friend turned to me and said, "You know what? That reminds me so much of Drunk History."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh my God!" And I don't want to spoil it too much. We'll talk about it later, but just his parts were just perfectly created, and I'm thinking more that might have been Edgar Wright's touch. And I honestly do think that there was maybe a little bit of how to describe it. With Edgar Wright kind of leaving the movie after having written and sort of guided it to its start, whoever else took over kind of pulled from those same threads, but you could tell that there was a little bit of a different hand that was going into this.
Maybe toned it down a little.
Yeah, toned it down a little bit. I mean, the dialogue in certain points, and in fact, it's those three main characters when they're together, when they're talking, the rapport, the sarcasm from Evangeline Lilly and Scott Lang's just awkward comments here and there are perfect. That's perfect Edgar Wright dialogue. But we'll see. Corey Stoll, totally wasted. Obviously, his ass looked great in those suits that he was wearing, but that's about it. And normally, I love a Corey Stoll. He's been doing a great job on The Strain, if you've been watching that. But here, I think he was wasted as a villain. They just didn't have the motivation down. There was the daddy issues, there was whatever else, but But overall, I had a lot of fun with it. It's definitely something to see in the theater. But I honestly think that it's one of those Marvel movies that you could see once in the theater and then buy the DVD when it comes out and watch it multiple times at home. You don't need to see it multiple times on the big screen. I did see it in 3D.
We have friends that have probably seen it 4 or 5 times already.
We have a friend who has seen it 7 times.
Wow.
7 times.
Don't mention names.
I'm not. Please, bitch. Give me some credit.
Wow. You got bitched out.
Ooh, that was mean.
All right.
But yeah, I definitely I give it maybe a little bit more than Brad, a B+.
All right, Jim. You are near and dear in my heart.
So the B+ for Corey Stoll's ass, but as a role, as a character, as an actor, maybe like a C- or something, right?
Maybe a D+. Honestly, it's just the way that he was written.
Yeah, I don't know if you can put that all on him, and I'll get to that too. I mean, I kind of agree with you guys. I actually kind of enjoyed this movie pretty much. I mean, I'm kind of in the vein of Guardians of the Galaxy, as Bill was saying, like these second and third tier characters, and they're exploring their stories. And that's one of the things I liked most about this was how much time they had to really set up this story. It wasn't overly complicated, with a lot of characters and their motivations and their cumbersome backstories and all that stuff like Avengers has, which was kind of a mess. I mean, it's still semi-enjoyable, but but really kind of a hot mess when you think about it. This thing played out more like a story, and you know, and I like that. As far as the acting goes, I think it was fine across the board. I mean, these Marvel movies are not actors' showcases. You know, they're just not. They're largely dependent on the characters written for them, and I think Corey Stoll's, you know, what you guys are saying about Corey Stoll is, I don't think there's anything about his acting that hurt this role or helped this character that much. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. I thought Evangeline Lilly was fine. I kind of liked seeing her again. Of course, Michael Douglas is great. Paul Rudd was fine, although really kind of a very muted Paul Rudd in this movie, I thought. As the what was the character's name? Help me out.
Scott Lang.
Scott Lang, yeah. I thought it was kind of a muted, kind of, you know, everyman criminal kind of guy. Yeah, and you know, I got some issues with some of the plot points and story physics and superhero physics, and we can talk some of that out. The Michael Pena character you talked about a little bit. Everyone seemed to love him, and I haven't seen him maybe in a lot of super comedic roles. I remember seeing him in a cop movie with Jake Gyllenhaal that I really liked. I guess I really like him more in his more serious roles. I thought they made him way too, I don't know, let's make the, you know, Hispanic guy, you know, telling the jokes kind of thing. It would seem very stereotypical to me, the way they use that character, and that was a little bit off-putting. But yeah, I'd say it's fine. It's a fine Marvel movie. I think people are going to enjoy it. I'm kind of in the ballpark with you guys about my grade. I don't think I'm going to rush out to see this one again or even buy it on DVD, but I think it's worth seeing. The 3D effects I thought were fine, nothing spectacular. I think there was one point where something got thrown at the screen and I actually jumped back at one point early in the movie. But yeah, fine movie. That's pretty much it.
Jump back.
So I saw it in 2D, and Bill, you saw it in 3D. It sounds like Brad and Jim were 3D. Steve, how did you see it?
I saw it in 3D and IMAX, or, you know, fake IMAX.
That's what we saw.
Odd man out. So talk to me a bit, and I guess the listeners at home. Like it sounds like we all said yes, go see this movie in some way, shape, or form. So could the four of you say, you know, I guess really sell me or the listeners on, like, is the 3D worth it? Like, should they buy a 3D ticket or is 2D okay?
I'm guessing either way. I'm guessing either way. I think there might be a little bit more.
I think you'd still get the same experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So go ahead.
I think out of the Marvel movies, the only one where I think 3D made a difference was the first Thor.
Okay.
And I think that was the only one that really made a substantial difference about seeing it in that format.
Now, I haven't seen it in 2D, so I can't comment, but one of the things I noticed and that I liked is that in scenes where like Ant-Man is sort of like jumping towards the camera and then miniaturizes while he's jumping, I like the effect of him being bigger in the foreground and then suddenly shrinking into the background. I thought that was very well done. And I don't know that you would get the same sense of him like shrinking into the screen in 2D. I liked that a lot, but beyond that, you guys are absolutely right. I mean, I don't know that it really adds anything else to it beyond just the 10 or 12 times, you know, he shrinks and enlarges.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I think the spectacle works really well. If you're seeing it for the first time, see it on the big screen, see it in 3D. But again, this is definitely a movie that's made for repeated home viewings, and you really don't need to have the 3D at home. It doesn't really add a lot, but it looks really neat when you're seeing it for the first time. You've got you're there in the theater. You've got a lot of people around you. It's kind of cool. But otherwise, if you're on the fence, save the $5 and see it in 2D.
So it sounds like the best way to do this is to buy a 2D ticket and hope they give you a 3D one. Like that's the best scenario.
By accident and sneak into the screen. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, they gave me the glasses. What was I gonna do?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, did you bring your own? Because how'd you get the glasses to go in?
Yeah.
Well, you missed the whole setup where like Bill plans the heist of 3D glasses from one of the recycled containers.
Oh, that's the twist.
That's the he
That's
like
the third act reveal.
he like unrolls the plans for like the movie theater layout and yeah, totally. So.
Let me tell you, those kids seeing Minions weren't too bright.
Oh my goodness.
So I got boy, can I see those glasses? Thanks.
Oh, you got the wrong ones. You got to see that man over there.
It's not like those cardboard barrels are tough to crack. You know what I mean?
Security is tight.
They usually stick them in some dark corner where you could just dump them out. Nah, this pair is smudged. Forget it. Yeah.
I don't know that I would want to risk that. Honestly, that would be like bacteria heaven. Sure.
Yeah.
I see Will's decided not to recycle and instead take some home for his own personal use.
Well, way to go! Way to think of the environment, Will.
Yeah, I'd get the pair with the guy who had like a massive breakout of zits on his bridge of his nose, and it's gross. Hey, so what you gotta wonder, like, what goes into the naming of some of these superheroes? Like Ant-Man is Ant-Man.
Also Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man is Spider-Man. But then you get Iron Man, who's Iron Spaceman. And then you have Batman, which is all one word. Batman and Superman's all one word.
Well, Batman
wasn't always
used to be with the hyphen.
Yep.
What's that?
Used to be with
Batman used to be with the hyphen.
Oh, so it's only like later as they get like more established that they can take the hyphen out. Like,
no, I think when they're trying to save space on the cover, they take the hyphen out.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any like marketing strategy or I don't know, like what goes into the decision of how to when you're naming your character and you. I don't know which one came first, and I mean, there's probably a whole science behind it.
Well, a lot of these are at this point fairly well established, right? Like, Ant-Man and Spider-Man are both characters from 50, 60 years ago, and so a lot of those decisions are kind of legacied in. And yeah, certainly a few have changed over time, but most of the ones that we're probably going to see movies for have had their hyphens or no hyphens for, decades at this point.
Do Spider-Man and Ant-Man ever team up? I imagine they must.
Oh, they've had, yeah.
Yeah.
Does Ant-Man ever help Spider-Man like learn to control spiders? Like he can, like.
So, not to my knowledge, but there was that thing in the 90s, what was it, Web Wars, where there was a lot of Spider-Man and Wasp in that?
I kind of probably got out of that at one time.
Yeah, me too.
There was also the whole, like...
What the hell was it called?
What was it? The Spider Queen or whatever her name
Spider Island.
Yeah. Or Spider Island, where like everyone actually turned into spiders and stuff, so I wasn't reading Spider-Man around that time either.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, I think, a little bit earlier. Like, Ant-Man teaching Spider-Man how to control spiders, I think that would be the stuff of nightmares, so they probably didn't want to bring that up. Because who wants an army of spiders coming towards you and it being a hero? That's, ants, they're kind of cute, they're small, they don't do a lot of damage unless you live in the south, and you stand in a pile of red fire ants, but, I mean, they're cute. Spiders, no.
Yeah. If there's a movie where Spider-Man is like riding a bunch of spiders and like there's like spiders doing this and spiders doing that and just spiders flying at the screen, fuck it. I'm not reviewing that film because I'm not seeing that movie. Like, I love comic books movies, but fuck that movie. Fuck that movie.
So, Will,
eight-legged freaks all over again.
Did the insects in this movie freak you out at all?
No. I have no problem with ants. I hate spiders.
Really?
But I'm exaggerating a little bit. I can see spiders in movies just fine. Like arachnophobia is still one I go back and watch every so often and think.
Arachnophobia freaked me the fuck out.
Oh yeah, it freaks me out, but it holds up. Man, I just watched it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Holds up.
Yeah. Do you still hesitate before you touch a bunch of bananas just in case.
Oh God, no, but I am now. Thanks.
Well,
those bananas from Peru. Whatever.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that just really quick? The ants versus spiders. In this movie, the ants are cute. I can totally see people, and this is like one of the big things I've been hearing. People going out and buying ant farms. Getting ants.
Wow.
I mean, they should have a Marvel branded ant
They
farm.
do. That was at Toy Fair that I went to. They had an Ant-Man ant farm.
really? Wow.
Ah.
But I mean, they're cute. Like you have, we'll talk about in spoilers. But they're the way that they're presented is a lot more adorable than freaky. Even when you see like a 50-foot ant. I don't think kids would be too creeped out by that.
Except for those fucking bullet ants, man. They can have them.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But I think that even with them, they still have a little bit of cuteness.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it was a smart decision for them to do that, because really we're talking about a superhero who one of his powers is shrinking, and the other power is to constantly be surrounded by bugs.
Yeah.
And think about that from a from a general viewing audience perspective. That is a hard pitch. That's a hard thing to sell. And if you make them too creepy or too gross or too weird, I don't think it works. But they ended up making them like, there's a little bit of like, holy shit, these things are scary when I'm small. There's some of that, but by and large, they're interesting. They have personality in the types of ants that are presented. We'll talk more in spoilers about those. Even the bullet ants, like these are ants that are well known. Like if you just do a search for like on YouTube for bullet ants, there's some fucked up things out there for them. Like there's this tribe that has this like coming of age ritual where they like weave them into these like grass like sleeves, and they put these bullet ants into them, and the men have to like wear the sleeve and just like go through the intense pain of getting bit over and over and over again. It is terrifying to watch. And so they put those insects in this movie, and it is way less terrifying by comparison. I think they showed some restraint in how they used them.
Hey, as long as you can, like, get the ants to do things for you, that makes them useful, so you're not going to be scared of them, right?
Well, yeah, especially, and it didn't end up like that episode of MacGyver where they were surrounded by ants and.
Right. Right.
I don't know why, but when I saw this movie, I thought about that one episode where they're stuck in the desert, or not in the desert, in the jungle in South America, surrounded by bullet ants that were coming.
Oh, I thought of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids a few times.
I think that was one of the pitfalls. If they did market this straight out as a comedy, I think a lot of people would think Honey, I Shrunk the Superhero.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. I thought of that a lot, actually, and we keep saying we'll talk about it in spoilers. I think it's probably time we move on to spoilers at this point, so that we can stop saying that and start saying what we want to say. But definitely some elements there. But are we all on board? Spoiler time. Yes. Thumbs up.
Yeah, I think we got the message across that it's a pretty enjoyable movie. I think without too many major issues or any major issues that we could really identify. Wait a minute. Will's got something.
Will has like a more of a point that I want to set down now, and then we can discuss more in spoilers. But I think it should be said. I think there were probably a few people who were hesitant about whether to watch this because of the whole Edgar Wright, Peyton Reed debacle. Like Edgar Wright was originally tapped to direct this film, and then he came off of it, and Peyton Reed was put in the place, and I think there were some people who felt, people who are fans of Edgar Wright. I'm a fan of Edgar Wright, who felt burned by the decision and were kind of like, I don't know if I really want this. But I think one thing that is still really nice to see here is that Edgar Wright's DNA is all up in this movie. Like, and he was a co-producer, and he was the script writer, or one of the script writers on this. So it's not like Edgar Wright had absolutely nothing to do with this movie. It's just he was pulled off of directing duties, and I think Peyton Reed did a good job of keeping those elements in place, while also keeping things on the straight and narrow. Like, I think if this movie gets
the Marvel straight and narrow.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, like, you have to play within. You have to play within an established world if you're going to be a movie within that established world. And I think this movie was allowed to be a little weird, was allowed to be a little fun, while also still playing within that sandbox. So if you didn't watch this movie because of the Edgar Wright thing, I would say still check it out. Edgar Wright's DNA is still in this.
I'd agree, and I'd actually say I kind of enjoyed the toned down Edgar Wrightness of this movie versus some of the other stuff.
Oh
you know,
God.
like was it The World's End that we saw?
Yes.
I just think a lot of that can for me anyway be too much. And I think more stuffed into this movie might have been something totally different. So I kind of enjoyed the end product, and I don't think I would have wanted to see more Edgar Wright in this movie. But you definitely could tell, Will, that you're right. His DNA was in this movie and had guided this movie.
Or as Will said, all up in this movie.
All up in this.
His DNA was all up in this thing.
He was all up in there.
And, just
phrasing.
Put his DNA, and it's just dripping all over inside this project. It's just dripping down the walls of the fourth wall. I mean, Anyway, well, guys, let's move on to spoilers. Will's giving a weird face. Whatever, Will.
Just you've given me a visual that is stuck with me for the next hour. Just like, and to be fair, I set it up. I set it up in ways, but
Edgar Wright's DNA with a bunch of ants crawling around in it.
Oh God!
Ooh.
What the fuck?
Ooh!
Nightmare fuel.
There you go. All right, spoilers for real. I've been trying like 8 times. Let's get to spoilers. So I have a question for you guys. The marketing for this movie came up a little bit earlier, and I want to know if for you guys if the marketing sort of took away from the well, first things first, spoilers, fair game, blah 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 blah. If you continue to listen, you are going to be spoiled. You know how it works. Okay, so the whole heist thing I enjoyed, right? The Ant-Man Ocean 11 thing, cool. I liked it. The only problem I had is the marketing. The trailers show you Yellow Jacket, or whatever his name is, battling with Ant-Man, right? So you, at least for me, as they're planning this heist to foil his plans and get the suit away and da-da-da-da, I'm like, I know it doesn't work. It fucking fails. You know why? Because in the trailer, I see them fighting. So every time they're like, oh, well, if we just deactivate the blah, 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 and get in there, we can get the suit and get out and blah, blah. I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't work.
You just knew all that stuff was going to lead to a battle.
Right. It just seems so like ineffectual. You know what I mean? I'm like, why are we spending so much time on this heist then when you've already told us through the trailer that it's not going to work? Why don't we devote more time towards maybe fleshing that villain out, maybe making that, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little too critical of the marketing, but I just feel like it stole some of the enjoyment away from me by letting me know that the plan gets foiled.
Well, actually, I think that it's interesting because it kind of the marketing completely left out one of the more interesting fights in the entire movie, and that's the one where he encounters the Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea that was going to happen. It was a complete surprise to me. I was expecting really the only conflict in this movie, or the actual fight in this movie, to be between Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket. Presumably after the heist fails and in the ensuing madness and chaos, they fight it out. But here along comes an assault on the Avengers' new headquarters that they just showed us at the end of Age of Ultron, and here's the Falcon to show up and fight the Ant-Man. So it's basically it's Scott's first attempt at actually going up against somebody who has their own power suit, who isn't just some guy, he gets to really, show what he's learned from Hope and from Hank. But that was a great surprise, and actually, I love seeing that.
Yeah,
I agree. I guess he had to go steal something there or something, but
yeah, he did.
That whole thing felt like thrown in fan service and universe tying together. Really felt tacked on to me. Within this movie, it really didn't do anything. Because I don't know, did Falcon have anything to do with the plot of this movie? Really?
Well,
or was it setting stuff up for something else?
Only in the sense that he's guarding where the little electromagnetic deactivator security system thing is. I mean, otherwise,
Which
no.
could have been anywhere.
Well, but look at the formula for yeah. In theory, it could have been anywhere. But look at the formula for a heist movie itself. Like a heist movie, and that's what this movie is. This is a heist movie that had some fights.
Get that.
With a heist movie, it's not just planning and execution. There is almost always in these types of films the test run, the thing where it's like, you know, before we knock over this casino, we need to make sure that this guy who's supposed to be able to crack the case,
lower stakes,
do it. The lower stake one. So that's what this scene was in the heist movie. This is the lower stakes, like the test run. It just so happened to be the world building. So I think it still worked within the confines of the movie itself, and also did the thing that it's supposed to do, which is set up why we're going to see Ant-Man will return, you know, in the next movie.
So that's what it was supposed to do.
I think it serves two purposes. Like, it does the world building. It also gives us the test run where you get to see kind of like the Act 2 climax type thing. But aside from all that, I love the fact that of all the different characters, that it was Anthony Mackie's Falcon. Like, this is a character who was kind of a second stringer in another movie, and who we're getting to see build up into an A-lister of his own. And I think that's something kind of ballsy that Marvel is doing. That some of these characters who haven't had their own films are becoming kind of marquee guest stars in other films. It wasn't Nick Fury showing up again, or Cap, or Thor, or Tony Stark, or one of the kind of the core people that you see show up. Now we're seeing some of the other characters get a chance to do that. From a world building perspective, I think that's really cool, because it's not just like three people who are linking everything together. It's becoming this kind of interconnected storyline. I do want to get back to the Yellow Jacket thing, but I'll do that in a second because I've talked enough about the Falcon thing. Bill, what did you think?
In terms of that particular scene?
Yeah. The Falcon and kind of how that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was as you said, the trial run. I think it was a really ingenious way of hitting both those tropes, but I also think that kind of came about by accident. As Jim said, it did feel tacked on, and when they got into it, and again, I'm thinking, this may be a case of so many cooks in the kitchen, script-wise, that oh, hey, we can do this both. It was almost like a light came on, and they filmed. Maybe I don't want to take.
And I don't want to take away from. I'm sorry. That might have been the scene that got Edgar Wright pissed off.
And I also have to say, I don't want to take away from that because it was a very well choreographed fight scene. A lot of that really, really worked. There were other disappointments I had, though.
What were some of your other disappointments?
Okay, since we're talking spoilers, again, we always get that moment where the character first faces the powers, in this case, the powers of the suit. And I thought that whole sequence, and I would put this more in Peyton Reed than anybody else, it felt like very limp directing. And to me, that should have been a standout scene. The first time that he encounters this shrinking ability, it should have been a laugh riot, and it should have been 100 miles a minute. And it wasn't. It felt almost perfunctory. Yeah. And I have to say that's one bit where I would pin that on the director more than anyone else.
You were kind of looking for something more like the Quicksilver scene from X-Men or something like that.
I mean, something that where you were telling people, wait till you see the scene. I'm not going to tell you what happened.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Wait till you see that.
Yeah, I mean,
you're right. A perfect opportunity there, and it just didn't work.
It didn't knock our socks off, but I thought the bathtub. I thought the beginning of that scene was pretty cool, pretty cute. It did go on too long for me. Like, all right, we get it. He's struggling with the suit.
Yeah, and that went on too long. Whereas the fight in the briefcase, which I thought was ingenious, was a little too short.
Yeah,
they could have played up with that a bit more.
I could have heard the whole Cure song, really.
Yes! Oh my God, yeah.
I gotta tell you, I laughed so hard at the Siri moment. That just tickled me to no end.
I'm gonna hit you with my disintegration ray. Playing
disintegration ray.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Fuck you, Siri.
Yeah. I'm right there with you on that opening scene. I think that heroic scene, or the I'm discovering my powers scene. I think there's two ways you can make that work. You can either make it go really, really slapsticky, or you can make it go really like heroic and kind of like, I'm blossoming into a hero. And I think that they went towards humor. I don't think they necessarily veered enough into that. And at the same time, it felt a little silly at points where it's just like, He just kept falling and hitting things. That said, what I did like about it, and I think this is one of the movie's real strengths, is they have this, like, obviously this is a guy whose powers are to shrink. And I think they played with the locations of, like, what it's like to be shrunken quite well. Like, whereas the scene itself didn't do much for me, I did like the fact that he was in the bathtub and the water came, or he was hanging on to the little ridges on the vinyl. Later on, the fight in the briefcase, the fight on the train set, which we saw a little, in the trailers and a little later on in the movie. Like, there were a lot of things where he got into the small world and our small world, and just I thought it was really, really clever the way they did those things. So yeah, while that scene felt a little limp, I think it's definitely direction and not necessarily the locations they pick, because I think all of the elements for a great reveal were there. There was just some missing element. There was something that didn't quite fully connect there.
I have a question, and I realize we haven't circled back to my original question, but that's okay because I have another one. Does the suit make him invulnerable? Because when he's falling and hitting the ground from like a mile up in shrink down mode and not getting hurt, does it make him invulnerable or something? I didn't quite understand that.
They talk about it where it increases his density. So basically, it shrinks the distance between molecules, which blah blah blah, probably means absolutely nothing in real science. But it kind of explains his increased strength, his increased durability. Really. He's not invulnerable, but he's definitely a lot harder and a lot more durable.
They don't want a hero whose basically power is to be stepped on and killed.
No, I understand that, and I understand the strength. But I mean, if you drop an ant from 50 stories up, the ant's still gonna go splat.
If you drop it from 50 stories up, but if you drop an ant from like 20 feet up, it'll, it's not going to be quite the same. Yeah.
It's
okay, but scale-wise, we're not talking about necessarily. I mean, he's falling like from like top of a ceiling all the way down to like a dance floor. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just like, I don't know. I'm not articulating it very well because I'm very tired. But the physics in this movie sometimes, and I realize it's a superhero movie, but the physics just don't always make sense to me. Like, you talk about the high density, like, you lessen the space between the molecules and how much force he's putting down when he lands, right? Jim, I don't know if this is a point where you want to talk about your thing, but it just doesn't always make sense within the rules that it sets up, and I guess I struggled with that a little bit.
Yeah, at the beginning it kind of set up the rule, like, he's jumping off the bathtub and he's landing on the tile floor and the tile cracks. And I'm like, that's interesting. So I guess he is denser. He's like, and they even mentioned it, like, you still have the force of a 200-pound man, when you hit something or whatever. Even though you're in a small package, you still have the same amount of force. And that explained the beginning very well. Like, yeah, he lands on glass and stuff, it's going to break. He's small now. He's like a bullet, right? They said, I think at one point in the movie,
right.
He goes through it. But then, like, later in the movie, he jumps onto a guy's gun at the end of his hand, and the gun doesn't move down. Like, if 200 pounds landed on your gun when you had it held out, your gun would be on the floor.
And that's a very fair point.
Yeah. Like, so it's like they set up rules, but then they kind of bend the rules. So I didn't know if the suit maybe was something that he learned. That maybe there was a way he could control that as he got better in the movie. Like, maybe I can adjust my force and whatever.
Yeah, so he's not a 200-pound man sitting on a
200-pound piece of lead landing on you.
I like that explanation. You win no prize.
We're in the weeds, but that's just like sometimes those little things can take you out of scenes. Like, oh, wait a minute, I thought
you want to get in the weeds. Talk about the quantum physics part where he just shrinks so much that he still maintains his integrity, like his own atoms maintain their integrity when he goes through quantum field. No, but it's comics.
I have to say that bit was also another disappointment, and probably my only disappointment special effects wise, because in the comics it's known as the microverse. That whole concept, and I thought, wow, we're going to be in for some visuals, and it was like something out of a '60s hippie movie.
Yeah.
Seriously, it was like out of the Trip or the Monkey's Head. It was like it was nothing special. I was really surprised at that.
Yeah, I was actually hearing Neil deGrasse Tyson voiceovers.
Now that would have been funny.
I need to watch that episode of Cosmos.
Yeah, or what the
I
knows.
was expecting him to go in there and find what's his name's wife.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, oh, there she is, you know. She's older now, but she's fine, and we can still get her out next time. Whatever.
Hank had said this whole thing about, like, man, when you get, like, quantum, when you get subatomic, things get weird,
You
man.
never know.
And I was expecting, like, it was a little Grateful Dead. It could have been a little bit more just, like, super fucking tripped out or something. Like, there's a lot of things they could have done there.
But it was an Eskimo video. You know, yeah.
And Brad, I'm doubling back around to your question from earlier, the Yellow Jacket trailer marketing, etc. question. I've been thinking a little bit about this one, and I think that you couldn't not show the villain in the movie in the trailer, because at that point, like, you're marketing like an action sci-fi superhero movie, right? And if you don't put that in, you lose a few of those really good trailer moments, like the train fight, which is kind of like, hey, this is funny. Also, the things are small. I think what they opted to do instead, which is the point we hit on a little earlier, was since they knew they had to do that, they obfuscated the Falcon as kind of the more of the mystery thing. I think if you had done it the other way around, then I think that it would have been confusing to audiences.
No. I'm not saying keep Yellow Jacket a mystery. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it takes away from the stakes when you spend 2/3 of the movie building up to this heist to steal this suit and shut him down, and the trailer immediately tells you that doesn't happen. And so my question is, does that take away some of the stakes? Does that take away some of the gravitas of what they're planning? Or, I mean, if you know immediately that they're going to fail, do you enjoy it the same way as if the trailer didn't tell you that?
Sure. If it's a superhero movie, you know there's going to be a costumed fight at the end. If it's a heist, you know some shit's going to go wrong, kind of as they're trying to execute their last few things, and someone's going to get caught, or things aren't going to work out according to plan, or whatever it is. So I think that with both of the genres of the film, I don't think it necessarily ruins it, because it's more stupid cliche, but I think these types of things are usually more about the destination and the journey themselves, at least with this genre. So for me, at least, I don't think that hurt the stakes.
Okay, cool.
And just one other thing. I mean, in these movies, you kind of know that. I mean, there's gonna be a big showdown at the end. I mean, that's every single fucking Marvel movie has, and almost every action movie has a big showdown at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you put it in the trailer, and granted, it probably took you out because you were thinking about that, but whether they put it in the trailer or not, I guess for it to have surprised you, Brad, it probably would have had to subvert what every other action movie has done, and not go to the big battle at the end with the Yellow Jacket, right? Then that would have been, oh, well, then they didn't spoil it, right? Because
or they could have done away with the whole heist thing within, like, the first half of the movie, instead of spending as much time as they did on it. You know what I mean? If things go immediately wrong with the heist and now they're having to, totally change things up right away, I think I guess for me, I would have felt a little better about it. I just think we spent so much time knowing that it's going to fail that it wasn't as enjoyable for me. And I know I'm not alone, because other people have made that comment too, which is why I was kind of curious where you guys fell on that scale. But it sounds like if it's a superhero movie and a heist movie, it all makes sense to everybody.
Well, and not just that. I mean, at the end of the day, like, there's also, films in general follow kind of the 3-act structure, and you know that Act 1 is your setup, Act 2 is your follow-through, and Act 3 is your kind of big climax and denouement. So I think that, especially when you're dealing with an action flick, you kind of, that's part of the formula. That's part of the way things are going to go. You would have to subvert the film dramatically, or the franchise dramatically, and at that point, it would be a completely different film. Also, the thing to look at too is this is the film that we got, so it really becomes less a matter of how the film should have came out, and probably more a matter of how they should have marketed or how they should have put that trailer together.
I think that's what Brad's saying. Like,
I'm pretty sure that's the point that I've been making the whole time.
Well, and that's
cool.
A second ago you were saying that it should have, the heist part should have ended sooner. So I'm just kind of bringing it back.
Yeah, I'm just saying from a marketing perspective, there's an impact there. So you either change the marketing to maybe account for that, or you change the movie, right? But in this case, the marketing was kind of the source of some of that. So,
and I just don't think that you can market this type of movie without also marketing some element of who the villain or who the climax is, or who the antagonist is going to be. I think that's just kind of a necessary evil.
Well, and they would basically, to make it surprising, they would have had to put that fight with Yellow Jacket earlier. Like maybe there was a henchman that was in the Yellow Jacket suit having a fight that ended up in the trailer to then make the heist and then the final confrontation with Corey Stoll's Yellow Jacket character be a surprise. But
yeah.
I mean, it is what it is, and I've had this problem for years with all movie trailers, especially for action films, is that they always show you the final confrontation, if not like the final scene in every single fucking trailer.
Right.
So if you actually see the movie, eventually you're like, oh, I've already seen this. Like I've already seen the the final attack, or I've already seen my hero broken and bloodied right before the very end. Like it's, they really do show too much in trailers, but sometimes it's the only way to get people to come to the movie.
Yeah. So I have a question for comic guys. Can we talk about the post-credits stinger a little bit?
Stinger, see what you did?
And what does it mean? Tell me what it means. I mean, I saw...
well, tell without spoiling Captain America Civil War.
Wait, oh, well, okay.
I mean, does it all just mean that Ant-Man comes into another movie? Is that really all it means?
So there's two stingers. We need to break those down into two. Kind of set up what they are. We're in spoilers.
Yeah. The first one is it has to do with Evangeline Lilly's character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Becoming the Wasp.
Oh, that's the Wasp.
She was already a Wasp, but now she is for real.
The Wasp.
Well, we don't know. She was maybe Catholic.
Also true.
And see, this is kind of like the problem that I have had, and I know a lot of people have been talking about it, is Evangeline Lilly and her potential throughout the entire movie. She's the one who probably should have been in the Ant-Man suit the whole time. She's got it on lock. She's got the in at the institute. She's a fighter. She knows the pin particles inside and out and can control ants, and yet she takes a back seat, and they let Scott Lang kind of make the sacrifice. Like he's the one who's going to be in the suit because he's expendable, and they talk about that.
He doesn't want to risk his daughter. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And but at the same time, I'm like, doesn't he have a daughter too that he doesn't want to? Whatever. And they explain it in that very emotional sequence where you find out what happened to her mother, and it's that okay, he just wanted to keep her safe, but she had the potential the entire time to be fighting alongside Ant-Man, and they kind of missed that chance by trying to do that whole emotional arc. And if they had done the emotional thing like a lot earlier, maybe she would have been in the trenches, shrinking down, fighting everything inside the Institute alongside Ant-Man. But
it was pretty obvious from the beginning that she was a potential badass.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right.
I mean, even from the trailers,
they didn't try to hide any of that.
No, I mean, even from the trailers, she's this powerful woman and she's got all this potential, but it feels kind of wasted.
The man will hold her back.
Exactly. But then, of course, in the first the post-credit sequence, there she is. She's got this suit now, and they're gonna give her her own suit. She'll be the Wasp. It's great. Oh, for a future movie.
Right.
Yeah, wouldn't it have been maybe cooler if we, instead of having it in the stinger sequence, if we We leave it out of the trailer entirely, and at some point during that final fight with Yellow Jacket, she shows up in suit, as kind of like and helps him out during that final fight. Like, at that point, and there can be some sort of setup, like maybe about the time shit's going wrong, maybe like Hank, as he's getting shot, can hand something over to Hope and says, go to this room, this will help him out. I don't know, I'm not the writer, but I'm just saying, like, there's ways that you could have worked that in such a way that she gets to wear the costume for even if it's only a small portion of the movie there at the end.
Right.
We get to see her kicking some ass, so that when we set her up for the next movie where she's going to be doing whatever, it's not going to be as much because we saw a cool costume. It's going to be because, oh yeah, remember the chick who was a badass in the final sequence of that fight? It'll be cool to see her in a movie. It's, again, kind of like with Falcon, like how we got to see him kick so much ass in Winter Soldier.
Or just don't show it at all. I mean, like, what's the problem with not showing it? You've already established that she's probably gonna, I mean, in the movie, I think, haven't you done enough already to show most people? Maybe not me, maybe not the non-comic guy. Maybe that's why they had to do it, because of guys like me who think, they think that I care about the next movie. You know what I mean? I mean, they maybe they just could have just let it end where it ended, and yeah, I know she's a badass, I know she's got potential, and then when they do the next movie, they go right into it. I don't know. It could have done that.
Well, there's most likely not going to be a Wasp movie. Like, it's not gonna happen. So, the only way that she'll come in as a costumed hero is either in the next big ensemble movie, which is going to be Civil War, Captain America: Civil War, or Ant-Man 2, which who knows when that could ever happen? 2020, 2021.
That's not been announced, right?
No. I mean, they're announced all the way up for like the next 3-4 years. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for that.
I wouldn't mind seeing another Ant-Man movie, to be honest with you. Just like I don't.
Or a Giant Man.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is there I don't know.
Wasp comes in, and now we've got Giant Man, so it's like, can't even see the Wasp. Giant Man's here.
Giant Man. Yeah. Sure. I've never even heard of Giant Man, but I'm in.
It's the same guy.
It's the same guy.
Same guy. Yeah. He just turns. Yeah. Does
Scott Lance or Scott Lang?
Well.
Him, yeah.
Yeah.
And I really have to, I have to stress this more because I didn't say anything about this earlier. For somebody who grew up with certain actors and now they're hitting that age as playing elder statesmen, man, Michael Douglas fills that role so well. He really was. I mean, he really was the anchor for a lot of the film.
Yeah.
And
so when do
I was so impressed with him in this one.
When do he and Redford square off in the old man?
That would be great.
Old man of Marvel.
Because there's no way I would be first in line if they had a 1980s Cold War Ant-Man and Wasp film.
Oh my God! Yes,
that would be amazing. And I do like that they are playing around with secret histories in this universe. Playing mostly in the 40s right now with Agent Carter, but they've given themselves more time and more of a spread now with just what we saw in the beginning. So I really like that idea.
What about that last stinger? Can we talk about that one?
That one's going to be hard without spoiling the next movie, but...
Well, you can't...
Well,
how can you spoil the next movie if the next movie's not...
Because we know the source material.
It's a comic book plot, so they already have read it.
But it also, I mean, I think
be different. Yeah.
The name. Let's face it, the name of the movie gives a bit away.
That's true.
There, and I thought I have to say though, it was I was confused. That was a little murky, that scene. I was like, are they in an Amco? Or is that are they, is this a garage where they're all working at or something? I was so confused.
Weird.
Well, on their off times, they...
Transmissions are us.
Picking up some hours, Shield's still in disarray. So.
Super transmissions.
Yeah.
Well, Thor...
Did anybody else feel that it was it was a little hard to piece together?
I reckon
I definitely felt that way, especially when Captain America's talking about something called the Accords. I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Marvel Comics guy, so you guys probably know what those are. I have no idea. But I felt like after having just watched Age of Ultron, was I supposed to know what the Accords are?
No, I think...
Then why would they put it in?
Well, what we're doing is it's kind of the equivalent of, you guys are Lost fans, or I think you guys were Lost fans. So there were things where they played around with, like, several of the seasons they played around with the past, but there were a few seasons where they played around with the future, and they would just show kind of a clip to something, and you'd be like, what the hell is this? And then it would make sense. I think that's kind of what they were going for. This is a jump forward to where things have already gotten kind of sour in some way, shape, or form, and we realize that something that we haven't seen yet in the movies is going to happen that's going to cause something that's going to cause a movie to be called Civil War. And at that point, Falcon's going to say, hey, let's loop in this Ant-Man guy. So all this is really setting up is the fact that that relationship that we saw earlier, that Falcon-Ant-Man fight, and the subsequent conversation that they kind of set up, is going to play dividends in some future dire event.
Yeah, he's going to be brought in, because otherwise they wouldn't have any connection. Ant-Man's not an Avenger, so there would really would be no reason to bring him into Civil War as one of the Avengers or on either side. But by having that fight sequence with the Falcon and then having this sort of jump forward where it gives him the opportunity to say, hey, I know a guy happens to be able to shrink, we might be able to use him, kind of brings him into this future movie. So, and it's interesting because in previous stingers where they've had that last stinger, it sometimes refers to a movie that doesn't come out for another year or two. I think was it? I think it was the end of Iron Man 2, where they actually refer to the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, at the very end of that stinger. Like he goes and I guess talks to, or was it at the end of the Hulk? I can't remember which one, but it basically referred
the Robert Downey Jr. cameo with William Hurt. That was at the end of Hulk.
Yeah,
the Incredible Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk, not the Ang Lee one. Yeah. Where basically they're referring to bringing the Hulk in, which doesn't happen until the Avengers, which is a couple of years down the line after Iron Man 2 and Captain America and Thor, and so it's.
But I also think it serves the purpose of planting a germ, and as you said, Brad, a great question for you going into another movie is what the fuck is the Accords?
Right. Right.
So there's that kind of planting as well, where it's not necessarily an Easter egg in a traditional sense, but a little bit of seed planting that will might bring you into something you otherwise might not really.
And I like that. I do like that. I think my frustration and confusion was just, I'm like, hey, I've seen the Avengers movies. I've seen the build.
Hey, that's Captain America, and that's the Winter Soldier.
I know who these people are. That's the Winter Soldier. I'm good. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't fucking
What are they talking about?
And I can also appreciate that, not knowing whether that, what kind of weight you should ascribe to that. Whether this is, there's the other three
just another
guys.
shawarma scene?
I'm so happy.
Right.
I can appreciate where it's hard to process if you're not intimately familiar with that world, how you should give weight to it.
We're in a different age of movies, and Marvel has created it. We've seen franchises before, but those franchises were all movie comes out, then sequel, then ends the trilogy or whatever. Sometimes they're usually serial films. Even the James Bond films are just kind of like the one film, and the next one comes out, and the next one. But Marvel has done something, and a lot of people are trying to copy this formula. They've created a formula. They've created a world that's not linear. It branches out more. Like if you look at the way that these films look, it's much more like a web or like a family tree or whatever of these things kind of spreading out. So they've created this different formula. They've created this different world building, and they're using it. To their credit, Disney knows how to market things. Disney is brilliant with marketing, and they found a way to market their films within their own films by getting the fan base excited for the next thing to come.
Well, not only the next thing, but we're talking like movies in the future, maybe 3-4 years down the line. I mean, if you think back to the original Avengers, who was the big bad behind the big bad behind the big bad was Thanos. You didn't see him again until Guardians of the Galaxy, and even then he's like, well, I gotta do something myself. You see at the end of Age of Ultron, there's a stinger where he grabs the Infinity Gauntlet. That's it. That's all he appears. And we know, because we're nerds and we actually pay attention to when movies are coming out.
Geek darling, never a nerd.
Yeah, the Infinity War like Avengers: Infinity War isn't coming out for another 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll see Thanos as an actual villain, whereas everything else he's just been kind of like, background, kind of calling the shots, but not really. And
were you guys surprised? I mean, besides the was it the Hawk? Who was the Falcon scene? That there weren't more, and then there was Hydra at one point. That there wasn't like references to the Affinity Stones or the or Thanos.
Well, I think that was one of the things that was refreshing about this movie is that it wasn't overloaded with that stuff.
Amen.
And you didn't have things like that friggin' scene with Thor with the river, whatever the hell that was.
Setting up Ragnarok.
Completely took you out of the action. I think that was one of the charms of the film that shows, hey, this can be part of this universe, just like Daredevil on Netflix. But we have those links to everything you've seen, but it doesn't necessarily have to serve that purpose of seeding and feeding.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be linked to everything.
And really, Jim's interested. But really, what are you going to show of Thanos at this point? Like, when he stops at an intergalactic truck stop to take a piss on his way to Earth?
Oh, he just turns around in his chair and says something sinister.
Well, he's on his way to Earth now at this point, right? We assume.
I've got to look out for ants. Oh, no.
There are ants in my cupboard.
I'll kill those
No, I think this film...
I'll have to take care of them myself.
Raid! This film struck a really good balance in that regard. Like, I think it's easy to be cynical about the way these films market themselves, and I can be that in some ways too. It's like, yeah, I get it. You guys are a perpetual marketing machine, but at the same time, the fun side of me also kind of thinks like it's also keeping me excited. It's keeping me engaged. Like the way they're doing this marketing is by planting these little seeds for things that are going to come, and I can think about it, I can overanalyze it if I so desire, I can talk about it with my friends, and that lets kind of the social elements do the marketing. But here, this was a really good balance. I felt like this was definitely there's no mistaking this is part of the greater Marvel universe. We saw the Falcon, we heard the reference to the end of the Avengers: Age of Ultron where they dropped the city out of the sky. We saw Hydra, we saw Agent Carter briefly appear, we saw Howard Stark. We saw all of these different things, but they all felt I think there's maybe a discussion about what there was a discussion earlier about whether how tacked on the Falcon scene was, but I think the rest of them felt very organic to the world. Of course, Hydra would want this technology. Of course, Pym had this crazy technology back in the day, so the kind of the higher powers that be would have been involved. The Carter and the Stark would have been involved with that. So all of that felt very natural. It felt like it was part of the world without being terribly ham-fisted. I'm glad that we didn't see Tony Stark kind of wheel up at some point and say, "Hey, I'm also a guy." I like what we saw here. I like what we saw here.
Yeah. Oh, here's a question. I know I kind of mentioned it earlier and we talked about it, but for the cute ants, what'd you think about the accidentally giant-sized ant becoming the family pet at the end? What is that? I mean, it kind of brings it back that this is a family film at its heart. It's you've got the cute little girl. She likes ugly things, and now she's got a pet giant ant that's the size of a Rottweiler. Living in her house, and everybody's cool with it.
I thought it was adorable, but what happens when Grandma comes to visit?
Well, maybe Grandma will have to deal with the giant,
Ants are cool. I bet they're really clean and they don't shed or anything. I mean,
they're constantly washing themselves.
Awesome.
Probably, yeah.
You could probably train them to
awesome
fucking do chores. Fucking reorganize my garage, hold the car up while I'm changing the oil.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be
really
awesome.
Strong. Yeah,
We've got a bunch of shit in our garage that we need to move and stuff. If we had some ants to come in and lift all that shit up for us, that would be great.
You can lift 50 times their weight.
Exactly. Hey guys, we have a live comment here from Xavier Herrera, who says, "Laughing my ass off at fat guys."
Oh yeah.
I don't know how to take that.
Fat trolling? Maybe.
It's one of those things where it's like, are you laughing because we're funny? Because I think we've been a little funny, so yay, thanks. Are you laughing because we're bad?
I'm just gonna adapt. I'm just gonna adopt my my cohort Steve's Southern roots right now, and bless your heart.
My adopted Southern roots. I'm originally from Philly.
I hope it comes on and shows
us now.
I hope he comes on here and shows us how in shape he really is.
Yeah.
Or maybe he really likes big guys, and it's an expression
we're funny.
of affection and thinks we're funny. We don't know.
We'll take that as a compliment.
That's how I to take it. Absolutely.
So bless your heart.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart. Well, guys, I think there's probably a lot more we could discuss, but I'm thinking it's probably time to move into some plugs. Are we on board with that? Can we shift gears?
I think so.
Cool. Because there's this.
By the way, one more thing. Rest in peace, Anthony.
I know.
We never see a body.
I know.
We never see a body. We just see the wing.
Never say goodbye to a Marvel character ever.
Right. I totally think he probably threw one of those miniaturizing discs behind him or something, and it got everything with the wing, and that's why we saw the wing fall.
And then he'll just appear in the sequel with just awesome mechanical wing.
He's gonna rescue someone.
Oh, totally. It's gonna be like something out of How to Train Your Dragon. He's gonna have a mechanical wing, and Ant-Man will be on the back, and he'll be like, "This is amazing."
I just couldn't let us go without mentioning Anthony.
Poor Anthony. We'll have to see what happens. But all right. So plugs. What is this Comic Book Bears podcast thing I keep hearing about, Bill?
Well, it's a podcast with right now a quintet of hairy heavy homos talking about comics, and you don't have to be a hairy heavy homo to listen in. We added Steve as a co-host early in the year, and we recently added Matt Broussard as another co-host, and things are going well. We're having a lot of fun. It's so much fun now. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't fun before, but the thing was, when I started that podcast, I never intended it. I always thought it would be like 4 people. Because that seems to be the best format for a roundtable type of show. I always thought, but there was a point where Matt guested on the show, and when we got into the point where we got into the comic discussion, it was, I'm like, this is the show I always envisioned. And,
Great.
So we have a little bit of a change of format this year, and it's been going pretty well. And, we're available on iTunes and Stitcher Radio and all the traditional platforms, so we're pretty easy to find.
Fantastic. Awesome. We'll make sure to put some good linkage in our show notes for you guys. Because, if you're a bear or someone who likes bears, or if you're one of our...
our listener tonight.
Yeah. Or, guys, we actually have a good-sized straight ally following on this show as well. So if you like comic books, you don't have to be a bear to enjoy their show. It might help. But definitely hit up the links in the show notes and check it out. Steve, what do you want to plug this week?
Well, I could plug two things. One is a movie that I just caught, and that's What Happened, Miss Simone, now available on Netflix. It is, as a kid in the 90s growing up, most of my music choices were whatever the Wesleyan University College radio was playing. But I did also get into one particular singer from watching the remake or the American version of Nikita, and that was Point of No Return. Nina Simone plays just a role with the music as well as her name. Yeah, it's interesting. But I didn't really ever know too much about her. I just knew that she was big in the 60s, disappeared for a while, and then just started coming back in popular culture. And this movie is great. I mean, it's told through interviews with her daughter, recorded interviews with her and her former husband and manager, and a bunch of other people who played with her, lots of musicians and other people who worked with her throughout the years. And it's fascinating. It's amazing being able to see her trajectory from being a very promising artist to being top of the soul, jazz, singing movement, and then become part of the civil rights movement and just drop off the face of the earth because of what she kind of represented at the time and how uncomfortable that made people. And then, of course, it looks at her own demons and stuff, which is it's a fantastic film. I recommend it.
Awesome.
And the second thing is actually a podcast recommendation that has nothing to do with comic books or movies, but it does have to do with Sailor Moon.
Sailor Moon.
It's called Sailor Business, and it is actually hosted by a comic book writer and a comic book editor, Chris Sims, from one of the writers on X-Men 92, and Jordan D. White, who is actually the editor at Marvel Comics for Star Wars.
Oh.
And they're both longtime Sailor Moon fans. They usually have a guest on every week, and they basically recap and talk about to the death every single episode. So one episode a week. They're about a year into it. There's so many great guests that they have on, mostly a lot of comic book writers and artists, and it's just fun to listen to. Tons of in-jokes. I recommend it.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. From me this week, I would just remind you guys, one of the films that we're going to be reviewing next week, well, actually both films, I guess I'll mention them both. One I want to plug, one I don't. Pixels is coming out this weekend. That's the film I don't want to plug, but now I feel like I have to because we're reviewing it. But the one I do want to plug is Paper Towns is coming out this weekend. And the tagline for that movie, I love it, Get Lost, Get Found. I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer for this film. It's like a teen coming-of-age story. But it's a novel adaptation. It looks really interesting to me. Jim, I think you're kind of into seeing this one too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any of the Twilight movies. Teen movies for me, I usually like the indie ones, like Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, we just saw, which was great. But this one kind of looked like it would be okay. I hope it doesn't suck, but we'll find out when we see it. It could go either way.
It could. It certainly looks a little more interesting to me than Pixels. Anyway. So that's my plug. Jim, what's yours?
So earlier this year, not too long ago, we reviewed a movie called Inside Out from Pixar. Pretty amazing movie. It's still hanging in there. I think it's probably going to be near the top of my list this year, maybe, or at least on my list, possibly. Made a big impression on us. I think all three of us kind of liked it. And so Pixar didn't have a movie out last year, but they're having two movies this year. And the next one is The Good Dinosaur. I don't know if anybody has watched the trailer for that actually just dropped today, but it looks pretty amazing. This is another movie that had a kind of a troubled history. It was supposed to come out in 2014. Had a different director. They replaced the director, and it got a rewrite because it was they didn't like the direction that it was going. But take a look at the trailer if you get a chance. It's called The Good Dinosaur. I think it's going to be one of those movies. It's animated, obviously. It's Pixar, but I think it's a smaller story with a lot of non-verbal things going on in the movie as a way to tell the story. Looks like it's got some interesting characters. The animation looks like the next level of Pixar animation in terms of like what do I want to say, like environmental realism of the movie. But take a look at it. The Good Dinosaur. It's got me excited. We'll see what you guys think when you get to see it.
Jim, you're totally like on a dinosaurish kick after the
I don't
the
know
new
what
Godzilla
it is.
movie.
Yeah. Well,
I'm gonna focus the camera on Jim. So look in the background, guys. We've got a giant Godzilla from the new Godzilla movie. Floating above Jim's head, we have Ghidorah from the old Godzilla movies, and I don't know, Jim. You're like
sadness on my shoulder.
And sadness on your shoulder.
Right.
You're on a big, like, monster.
Yeah. This is. I mean, like I said, the trailer looks really good. And I'm excited about these kinds of stories. So we'll see what happens.
But is there
There's no monster battles, I don't think.
But is there a woman in high heels running from a dinosaur? That's what I want to know.
There may be. I don't know. I don't know if high heels were invented at the time this movie is set. It's set in a prehistoric age, so I doubt it.
That's disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Sorry.
That's okay. Will, what's your plug this week?
Man, like mine was hard this week because there were a few things. I saw a few good documentaries on Netflix, but the one I'm going to talk about instead is let's go with Trainwreck, the new Amy Schumer comedy that's out. I like Amy Schumer. I like Bill Hader. I like Judd Apatow, and by and large, this movie is pretty darn funny. I mean, it's a rom-com, and so go in expecting a rom-com, but it's also Amy Schumer being delightfully torrid. So I think this movie was a lot of fun. If you want a good laugh, Trainwreck will have it for you.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you, Will. And Bill, I know that you had to plug the podcast, but do you have a non-podcast plug?
Can I do 3 really quick?
Of course.
The shirt I'm wearing, as you'll see, is Lucha del Oso, which translates to bear fight. And if you're in the Los Angeles area, that's my friend Tito Gutierrez, his band, and you can check them out at bearfightmusic.bandcamp.com, and might register with you if you're into old-style California punk. Also, this is something I'm really proud of. So much I got 2 copies. Nice. This is from Geeks Out, the Power Anthology. Myself and my co-host Matt Brossard, and I know that Will is now the owner of a Matt Brossard sketch cover.
I am.
Yeah. For the Mad Max. We have a story in this book that we're really proud of, but another thing I just have to push is we are in very good company. So it's a gay-oriented theme book. You can get it from Geeks Out site. They have what do they call it? It's not a feed bag. What the hell do they call it? A Square Up site that you can link to from their website. And if you're in the New York City area, it's also available in the shops at the Midtown Comics locations. And if you're in the North Jersey area, this upcoming Saturday, I am at the Garden State Comic Fest, and I will be hosting the trivia contest, and there's some awesome prizes. So if there's anybody that's in that area, and if I can just for 1 second, I know there's somebody that's a listener to both our podcasts, Paul Alderate. Forgive me if I butchered the last name, but he recently had a passing in his family, and just wanted to extend some good wishes to him.
Absolutely, right. Paul. We are thinking about you. Big hugs and love going your way, for sure. Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. These crossover episodes are always a blast. We enjoy them so much. So, Bill, Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having us. We always have a blast on this, and I'm glad Steve, busted his cherry.
We busted his. That's the way I like to look at it.
Well, I do have to say thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. This is I've been listening to you guys for a long time, and this is just great. Thank you.
Well, we are thrilled to have you come on, Steve, and definitely we hope to have you guys again soon. Again, doesn't have to be a superhero movie. That's kind of how it's been falling, but if there's something you're excited to talk about, let us know. We'd love to have you guys.
We love you, Steve, but now that you're a big cheese, podcaster, that's no excuse to stop listening. I'm just saying that.
What I'm saying is we rely on your download numbers.
You know what? I have to say, we mentioned him being a pledge. I think I'm going to institute that he has to get paddle signatures from the 3 of you, too.
Oh!
Yes!
Nice. There we go.
Well, it's been a while since I've been out to Arizona and Texas, so I don't know.
There you go. Open dungeon. Room.
Oh my God.
We don't really have a dungeon. That was for comedic effect, but
yeah,
we might
don't really have a dungeon.
Don't ruin the illusion.
I know someone who has a dungeon that lives 1.5 miles away that we could,
rented dungeon? Perfect.
Rented dungeon.
Yeah, rented dungeon.
Rented dungeon. Yeah, for sure. What we'll have to do, guys, we've been talking about on MBP TV and Movie Bears Podcast doing like a P-Town house or something next year. You guys should come too. We'll just make it a big bear podcast house. We'll bring our paddles, Steve, and you can
perfect. Get your signatures in one place.
Check it off there at the same time.
Oh, poor Steve.
Just a little checklist and okay, next.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. And then we'll have one big live podcast on location, like out on the balcony overlooking the ocean. That would be awesome.
Shirtless?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shirtless.
If we had signal, we should just go by the pier, you know.
We could just have it at Dick Dock after 10.
Oh my god. That would be
Although
man.
we might be asked to keep it down.
We probably would.
Wow. That's not usually what I'm asked about.
Oh my god. Jim.
I think it's all about phrasing tonight. It really is.
Yeah.
Well, with a movie like Ant-Man, where you talk about things getting small and really big at the same time, you know what I mean? Like, how can you not?
That's exactly what I thought the entire time watching this movie. It's like, at some point, we're going to bring this to Dick's. At some point.
If it were rated R, yes.
Yeah,
It
right.
would definitely be, like, half dick jokes. But... And actually, if Edgar Wright had been able to do the entire film himself, yes, there would have been at least one or two.
Yeah.
It's all about size.
I'm not sure Disney would have approved.
Probably not. Probably not.
Maybe that's what got Edgar Wright pissed off.
Like, I really wanted this joke, guys.
That was the hill he died on the dick jokes.
I wanted dick jokes and weird aliens. All right. Well, guys, this has been a total blast. Thank you again for joining. Listeners, we saw you hanging out with us. We got one comment. Could have been fat shaming. Could have been fat loving.
Yeah.
Who knows?
knows?
No follow-up comment there, but thanks for hanging out with us. If you're listening on iTunes Digital Tape Delay, on Stitcher, all that fun stuff, we're glad to have you guys, too. Feel free to comment on our post this week with the episode and let us know what you thought about Ant-Man. We'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.